this incident of executing his own son, it really scars and taunts Sultan Suleiman for the rest of his years. They assembled this Holy League, 300 ships to go and attack the Ottomans. That's a massive fleet, by the way. They also execute his best friend. The Christians realize that there's no way we can win this battle. One judge is doing one thing, another judge is doing another thing. It becomes very messy, right? It's like, what's the empire's law then? This lesson that we take from him, the idea of justice, with the sun millions of miles away, we still can't take it. And imagine that day when the sun is right above your head. What will you do then?
إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى.
So Sultan Suleiman I realizes there's problems in my eastern border, so he marches out with an army to go and deal with the Safavids. And he marches straight for, he doesn't care about anything else, because he knows how powerful his army is. He goes straight for Tabriz, the capital of the Safavid Empire. Now, the Safavids, they are also quite smart. They realize there's no point trying to fight the Ottomans out in the field. Their cannons and their soldiers, they are way too powerful for us. Our army is still very traditional. The Ottomans have a very modern army. There's no way our soldiers can defeat the Ottomans. And the world knew there's no way you can defeat the Ottoman army. So what they do is he goes to Tabriz, and on his way to Tabriz, what they do is they use something called scorched earth tactics, guerrilla warfare, meaning we get into smaller groups, not a large scale battle, get into smaller groups and raid the Ottoman army. When they're camped at nighttime, go and raid their camp. Their supply lines, food that is being brought to the Ottoman army, raid that, steal their food. So this will make it very hard for the Ottomans to keep marching. Eventually they run out of food. The soldiers will, start to get annoyed and angry, and they want to go back. We'll weaken them. So, but despite that, Sultan Suleiman I still marches onto Tabriz. He doesn't care. He marches onto Tabriz. And when he arrives at Tabriz, he realizes most Safavid soldiers, they've run away. There's barely anyone at Tabriz to put up a fight. So very easily, he conquers Tabriz. And now the Safavid threat is dealt with. Tabriz is now under the control of the Ottomans, and the Safavids have been conquered. And now on his way back, he goes a little bit further down south, and he takes Baghdad. Now, the taking of Baghdad is really, really important. Perhaps from a military standpoint, the taking of Tabriz is more important. But from a symbolic perspective, the taking of Baghdad is really, really important. The Safavids control Baghdad, he takes that. Why is that really important? Because now the Ottomans, they rule over all the traditional Islamic cities. Beforehand, they slowly, they were, an empire that grew mainly out of Europe. So they never had much religious legitimacy. The people didn't look at them as the main Muslim empire. But now that they've taken, Mecca, Medina, Egypt, North Africa, Syria, Sultan Selim I took all of these. And now the last one was Baghdad. And now that they take Baghdad, they are now what people are seeing them as a resurgence, a rebirth of the Rashidun Khilafah, the Umayyad Khilafah, the Abbasid Khilafah. They are now a resurgence of the Islamic Khilafah, a proper Islamic Khilafah. Because since the Abbasid Khilafah was, destroyed in 1258 by the Mongols, the Muslims never really had one single empire. It was always different small empires ruling over different states, small sultanates. But now finally, the Ottomans, they had united the entire Muslim world once again. And so he takes Baghdad, he goes back to Constantinople, and there's more wars with the Safavids. Many more wars happen until in about 1550s, they sign the Peace of Amasya. In 1555, they sign a peace treaty, the Safavids and the Ottomans. And what does this peace treaty say? That Tabriz will go back to the Safavids, you guys can take that back, and Baghdad will remain with us. So a solid border is drawn between the Ottomans and the Safavids. And that concludes his war in the East, basically. The East is dealt with, the West is dealt with. Now there's one more frontier that he fights in. One was Europe, one was Asia, and there's one more. And that is in the sea. The Ottomans had been growing in their naval power. Remember we spoke about Rhodes at the beginning, right? They're growing in their naval power. And Europe realizes that. The Ottomans are getting much, much stronger. And remember, if you're an enemy, we said the Mediterranean gives you a shortcut to go and trade with China, India, all these places. And they are growing in trade. England, Spain, everybody wants to go and trade with Asia. Why? What's really important in Asia? Anyone know in terms of trade? What is it that us Asians love to put in our food? Spices, right? So it was really, really important. The spice that was coming from India, it was a massive good, a really important good that Europeans could trade and make a lot of power. So the English wanted it, the Spanish wanted it, everyone wanted it. But to get to India quickly, you wanted that shortcut through the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. But if you're an enemy of the Ottomans, they're not going to give it to you for cheap. You want to take our shortcut, you're going to have to pay us a lot of money. If you're an ally of the Ottomans, they'll give it to you for cheap. But if you're not an ally, you're going to have to pay a lot of money for it. So Europe realized that and said, you know what, we need to try and do something. We're not going to become allies. Us and the Ottomans, Spain and the Ottomans are never going to become best friends. So they realized that we need to do something here. So they get together, they assemble a large fleet called the Holy League. What's the Holy League? This was like the Crusades, right? You've heard of the Crusades where European armies got together to take Jerusalem. This was a similar thing. European sailors, European naval, you can say European navies, European fleets got together to try and destroy the Ottoman fleet and take the Mediterranean. This was the Holy League, mainly led by the Spanish and the Venetians. These were the two important, the two main players. And these were like the other, you can say, rivals to the Ottomans, the main rivals. One was the Austrians, and the other main rival was the Spanish. But they were like a rival in Africa, North Africa, and the sea, whereas Austria was the rival in Europe, and you can say Safavids were the rival in Asia. That gives you a bit more context of what was happening. Yeah, they assembled this Holy League, 300 ships, to go and attack the Ottomans. That's a massive fleet, by the way, 300 ships. And it's not just these two countries, by the way, Venice and Spain. It's many other countries, but they were the two main players. So they go to the Mediterranean to try and destroy the Ottoman fleet. But the Ottoman fleet, it wasn't weak. What had been happening in that time, before this battle, the Ottoman fleet had gotten much, much stronger. They realized their main weakness was their fleet. They have a powerful army, but their main weakness is their fleet. So there were these, what we call corsairs. Anyone heard of a corsair? I don't know what that is. A corsair? You guys know what pirates are, right? So, you know, they're like pirates, but there's a key difference between pirates and corsairs. Pirates are like independent, you know, sailors that they go and they raid ships, they kill people and stuff like that. Corsairs, they're a bit more structured. They sometimes work with the government. Their idea is a bit more to try, not just like raid a ship and kill everyone, but go to like countries, different islands and conquer them basically. So it's a bit different. They're a bit more structured, a bit more organized. You can say like a private militia, but in the sea, yeah? So there were Muslim corsairs as well. And one man, his name was Barbarossa, yeah? I got confused, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean, they have Barbarossa, so I always get confused between the two. So Barbarossa was the Ottoman corsair, and him and his older brother, they were used to go and they would conquer these, you know, raid these, what's it called, Christian ships and islands. And Sultan Suleiman I, he heard about this. So he wrote to Hayreddin Barbarossa, the younger brother, and said, why don't you come and join me? Like, we're both Muslims, we're both working towards the same, you know, objectives, same ideals. So why don't you come and work with me? And, you know, I'll give you 1/5 of, all you have to do is just give me some of your loot, and I'll give you more ships and more sailors, and you can command the royal fleet, the Royal Ottoman fleet. So he says, yeah, fine, no problem. Sounds like a good deal. So now they have this new admiral, Grand Admiral of the Ottoman Navy called Hayreddin Barbarossa, and he strengthens the Ottoman Navy. So the Holy League, they come to fight against the Ottomans, the Ottoman fleet. And as they go closer to the Mediterranean, they see the Ottoman fleet they're a bit more closed off by an island. They're closed off and they're waiting there. And this was near a place called Preveza. And this battle is called the Battle of Preveza, and that's where it gets its name from. So they're sort of waiting by this area called Preveza, hidden off. And if the Holy League attacks that, they will get destroyed because it's very small and it's like a cutthroat point, so a choke point. So if you got so many ships, but you can only get them in a few at a time, and we'll just keep firing at you and destroying your ships. So the Holy League, they realize we need to lure the Ottomans out of there. So they sail away into open water, away from the Ottoman fleet. Hopefully the Ottoman fleet will chase them. But the problem is 300 ships, like I said, 330 ships actually, around about. That's a large amount of ships, and it's very hard to coordinate them all, make it very organized. So they try to move away and do all these maneuvers, but the Ottomans see that they're trying to make these maneuvers, and whilst making these maneuvers, they become very disorganized. The Holy League, they become very, very disorganized. One ship is going that way, one ship is going this way, people don't know what to do. And so here, the Ottoman fleet, Barbarossa, he sees this moment of weakness, he leaves his point of, you know, security and safety, and he attacks the Holy League, and he throws them into disarray, destroys many ships. The fighting goes well into nighttime. And whilst this fighting is happening, one half of the Holy League, what they do is they try to move away, far away. So what will happen there is maybe some of the Ottoman ships will chase them. And that way now, there's less Ottoman ships, we can pick them off. Do you get it? So the Ottomans will be halved and maybe they can pick them off. But Khalid ibn Barbarossa, he knows what they're trying to do. He's smart. He knows that you're trying to make me send more ships away from you so that you can destroy my ships here and then you can go and destroy my other ships there. But I won't do that. He stays there and he fights. And the other half of the Holy League that had run away, that had sailed away, they just wait there like nothing's happening. They don't know what to do. And so the Ottomans destroy more and more Christian ships until the Christians realize that there's no way we can win this battle. The Ottomans are too skilled. They might not be as powerful as us, but they're too skilled for us and they're too well trained for us. And so they retreat. And although they might not have destroyed the entire Holy League, this shows the dominance. The Ottomans had secured their dominance over the Mediterranean. No one dared to try and once again attack the Ottomans in the Mediterranean. The shipping was safe, the trade routes were safe, the pilgrims that were, making that journey from, by sea to, to the Umrah or Hajj, they were all also safe. And so that was basically their, the frontier in the sea, the wars that go on there. And really, that's mainly his military campaigns. And as you can see, so many lessons to try and draw from all these military campaigns. And really, just more on his foreign policy, some of the things that he does is France. Like I said, France and Germany and England, they're fighting, right? And so France, they write to Sultan Suleiman I asking for help because they know that the Ottomans are very, very powerful. Whoever the Ottomans back, whoever the Ottomans support will win. So he writes to Sultan Suleiman I, the king of France, and he says, can you please help us? We need some soldiers, we need some money, can you help us? Because Germany is trying to attack us. So he writes this very, very famous letter, Sultan Suleiman I, back to the king of France. And it's very powerful because it shows just how powerful the Ottomans were. What does he say? He says, I am Sultan Suleiman Khan, son of Sultan Selim Khan, son of Sultan Bayezid Khan, the Sultan of Sultans, the king of kings, the crowner of rulers, the shadow of God on earth, and the Sultan and Padishah of the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, Rumelia, Anatolia, Karaman, Rum, Kurdistan, Azerbaijan, Persia, Damascus, Aleppo, Egypt, Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem, all the Arab countries, Yemen, and many other countries that my great ancestors conquered with their irresistible strength, and of many other countries that I conquered with my magnificence, with the power of my spear and my victorious sword. To you, King Francis of the small province of France. He basically says that we've heard what you've said. We are aware of what you need. Keep your heart contented. Do not grieve. Do not worry. Our swords are belted. Our horses are saddled. It will be as it's said that we'll take care of this problem for you. Don't worry. And really, it highlights, look at the power dynamic here. That he's saying, look, I'm the Sultan of all these different countries. To you, the king of the small province of France. Highlighting the power and authority that the Ottoman Sultan had by this point, right? And another time, the French wrote to them and said, can you please give us some money, some gold, because our empire, the French kingdom is about to collapse, about to go bankrupt. So he also lends them money. So you can see how powerful the Ottomans were at this point, that they, saving France. Another time, one of the Europeans, they write to Sultan Suleiman I asking for some soldiers. So Sultan Suleiman I, he sends military outfits. He sends a bag of military outfits. And the European king, he opens and sees, he writes to Sultan Suleiman I and says, I asked you for soldiers and you're sending me like uniforms. Are you taking the mick out of me? And what does Sultan Suleiman I say? He says, no, tell your soldiers to wear these military outfits, these Ottoman military outfits, and you will see that the enemy won't even come near you. And that's exactly what happened. They saw that the enemy was they thought that the enemy was, Ottoman soldiers because of the outfits they wore. And they were so scared, they didn't even dare to try and attack them. That's how powerful the Ottomans had managed to get by that point. And now, so that's sort of his military campaign and foreign policy. But what was happening at home for the Ottomans? What was happening in his own, with his own family? One of the key incidents that happened, there are sort of some key incidents that happened during his life. One is that the Ottomans, they sometimes had what we call concubines. And he is the first one to sort of marry one of his concubines. And what that does is she becomes very, very powerful in the Ottoman court. She rises up and becomes very, very powerful. And it's really from here that we begin to see that women get very, very powerful in the Ottoman court. And this was the first time. Sultan Suleiman I's life, he marries one of his concubines, Hurrem Sultan, and this is the first time that they ever do this. And so she becomes quite powerful in the Ottoman court. And then from here, this is where we see women beginning to get involved in the Ottoman court. And really, for the next 100 years or so, they become quite involved until in the late 1600s, early 1700s, they sort of once again the sultans take power back and rule as the ultimate ruler. Now, the other really key incident is the incident with his son, Prince Shahzadeh Mustafa. Shahzadeh Mustafa was seen as a very, war-minded, a very skilled prince, right? He was very strong, very powerful, and very intelligent. But he gets involved, he doesn't really get involved in it. It's rumors begin to spread that as Sultan Suleiman I gets older and gets weaker and is unable to go on all these military campaigns and win, rumors begin to spread that Shahzadeh Mustafa is planning to overthrow his father. And so these are rumors about treason, that he's going to overthrow his father and take the throne from his father. Now, most likely this isn't true. When you look at the sources, this isn't true. It's more that these, the Sultan, his other son, the father of his other son, the mother of his other son, the mother of Sultan Suleiman's other son, Hurrem Sultan, she was spreading these rumors so that she can remove Shahzadeh Mustafa from contention for the throne and make sure that her son takes the throne. That was really more likely what had happened. And so these rumors begin to spread. And unfortunately, Shahzadeh Mustafa, he doesn't do enough to dispel these rumors. He doesn't go around to make sure that his father realizes that these rumors aren't true. And so in the end, Shahzadeh Mustafa is called to a tent, not the throne room, to a tent. And there, executioners wait. And Sultan Suleiman I gives the order to have his own son, Shahzadeh Mustafa, strangled with a bowstring and killed. And so Shahzadeh Mustafa is executed because of these rumors of treason. And really, this incident of executing his own son, it really scars and taunts Sultan Suleiman for the rest of his years. And it's something that plays on his mind. It affects him a lot for the rest of his years, the execution of his son. He also executes his best friend, Ibrahim Pasha, because he believes that Ibrahim Pasha had become very, very powerful and had started to also have, ideas of treason and like we said even before, right, with the reign of Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih, he executes Chandar al-Halil Pasha. And this is something, the reason is because they want to make sure that there's no duality in the empire. There's no idea of anyone else becoming more powerful than the Sultan. Only the Sultan has all the power. That was one of the main reasons. And so similar incident occurs with Ibrahim Pasha also. But Ibrahim Pasha, he was very close with him. That was his best friend. He grew up together. And so executing his best friend and his son, it takes a toll on Sultan Suleiman I and really, really begins to affect him. So that was some of the internal politics that was going on in his own harem, in his own family. Now, the other last part I want to talk about is the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. And that's what we're trying to understand, right? Sultan Suleiman I, he brought back this golden age in the Ottoman Empire. What happened was, what are some of the things he did? Number one was why was he given the title Kaynooni, Suleiman the lawgiver? It's because of the fact that he developed his own Qanun. Well, a Qanun is basically a law book, a book where they combined Islamic Islamic law is split into, you can say, two different parts. Worship, which is about the 5-day prayers, fasting, hajj, things like that. And then you have dealings and transactions with other people, mu'amalat, what we call it, fiqh al-mu'amalat. Fiqh al-ibadat is basically fiqh of worship, 5 pillars and things like that. Then you have fiqh al-mu'amalat, which is interactions and dealings with other people, criminal law, family law, these types of things basically, right? Finance, economy, things like that. So what he did was he combined both of them and made one codified book, one law. He codified Islamic law, that the entire empire will follow this law book. Before, it's like this judge will decide what to do based on his understanding. This judge will do based on his understanding what he decides, he'll issue his verdict. But now, no. Now there is one unified system. Because obviously, if one judge is doing one thing, another judge is doing another thing, it becomes very messy, right? It's like, what's the empire's law then? People will know what the law is. So now we have one codified law and everyone will follow that. And this was used for centuries by the sultans who came after him. And that's why he was called Kaynooni, because of this law book he made, and sultans used it for centuries after him, this one codified book. And it wasn't him on his own. It was using the Shaykhul Islam, the main head figure of Islam at that time. I believe his name was Shaykhul Islam Abu Sud Effendi. That was his name. And together they worked together to try and create this book, this codified law, the Qanun. So that was one sort of thing he did, these legal reforms. Another thing he did was intellectual advancements. They began to build universities across the Ottoman Empire. They began to build schools, research facilities, all these different things, just like in Baghdad. And very importantly, they even began construction of an observatory. One of the first observatories around the world. You guys know what observatories? Like where you sort of use telescopes and stuff and try to see, the sky and the planets and the stars and things like that. So this was one of the first big observatories in the world. It wasn't done during his life, but it was started during his life, and after he died, they continued with the construction of the observatory. So that was some of the intellectual advancements. They began to make scientific advancements. Also architecture. If you go now to Istanbul, you'll see a lot of the things that are there, the massive masjids and the, you can say buildings that are there, from the Ottoman era, a lot of them were made during this time by one man. His name was Mimar Sinan Pasha. And he was sort of the head, architect, Sultan Suleiman's head architect. So he built the massive, Shehzadeh Masjid, if you look at it. And obviously his main piece of work, which was the Sulaimaniya Masjid. And if you look at the Sulaimaniya Masjid, it's sort of on the banks of the Bosphorus Strait. It's a very beautiful masjid, massive minarets. And it's not just a masjid, it was a kulliya, an entire compound with a university, soup kitchens, libraries, research facilities, schools, and obviously a main masjid as well. So all these different masjids and institutes and buildings were made during the time of Sultan Suleiman I. So a lot of architecture also during his time. And all together, the peace and the prosperity and the justice and the intellectual advancements together, this made the Ottomans usher in a new golden age. Not just the Ottomans, but the Muslim world. And from that dark day on February 1258 in Baghdad, again, like we spoke about, where the Muslims were 2 million people killed over the span of a few days, there's no hope for people. But finally, through the efforts of the Ottoman Empire, the Muslim world was reborn once again, rose from the ashes once again, reborn, and this golden age came about. And some scholars even say that Constantinople had surpassed Baghdad in its grandeur, in its magnificence, in its intellectual advancements. And really, surpass Baghdad is no ordinary feat, right? Baghdad is one of the greatest cities in human history. The history of human civilization, Baghdad is one of the greatest. So some historians say Constantinople was even greater, is a massive feat. No, is nothing small. So that is some of the main things that Sultan Suleiman I achieves. And one last thing I want to speak about is very briefly is this lesson that we take from him about the idea of justice, that everything he did at the center of it was justice. And that's why he was given, another reason he was given that name, Suleiman Kaynooni. He ruled with justice. Whatever happened, it doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew or an atheist, wherever you were living in his empire, you knew that the Sultan's justice was applicable to everyone. You felt at peace, you felt secure, that there was no one that was going to harm you because there was justice. He wouldn't discriminate and, give a Muslim favor over a non-Muslim. Everyone was equal in his eyes and he helped everyone out. And that's one lesson for us to take. Regardless of who we are, this is something, you don't have to be a sultan ruling over 3 empires, right? One of the people that will have shade under the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment, where there will be no other shade. The sun will be right above your heads. Some people will be drowning in their own sweat because of how hot it will be that day. The sun will be right above your head. Right now, when it gets hot here at 35, 40 degrees, with the sun millions of miles away, we still can't take it. And imagine that day when the sun is right above your head. What will you do then? And on that day, very select 7 types of people will get shade under the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of those is a just ruler, a just leader. And I remember my teacher once was telling me about this, and I told him, Ustadh, like, you can't do that. It's not like any of us are going to become a king or something like that, right? He says, you don't have to be a king. Anyone can be just. If you want to become a teacher, he was saying he's a teacher. Even me, it can become me if I am somebody who is just and fair to everyone else. So same thing, if you are just and fair to everyone, regardless of who you are, with your family, being just to your siblings, being fair with your siblings. If you're, working as a manager, being just and fair to those people under your authority, under your control. Whoever you are, being just and fair. Even out on the street, being fair and kind to everyone. 2 people are fighting, don't go and just help a Muslim because he's a Muslim. Help everyone out. Be equal, be fair, be just. And that's one key thing that I think we should take away from his life. The reason he's remembered today as such a magnificent sultan, it's not because of all these military campaigns. Yes, it's magnificent, those military campaigns, but the main thing was his justice. He's not remembered as Suleiman the conqueror. He's not remembered as Suleiman who conquered Europe or Suleiman the warrior. He's remembered as Suleiman Kaynooni, Suleiman the lawkeeper, because of his justice and fairness. And if there's any sort of lesson we take away from his life, then hopefully it can be that one, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept the efforts of Sultan Suleiman I, his family, and all those around him, and reward them for all the things that they achieved. We pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts all his efforts and rewards them, and allows this ummah to once again be strengthened through the likes of Sultan Suleiman I. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless every single one of us for attending and accept it from all of us. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wa sallallahu wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina wa maulana wa nabiyyina wa habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.